Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Around the Big Ten podcast here at youtube.com/@SaturdayGlory. Mark Givler here with Chip Minnick as always. I'm not going to throw out the date. I already did that on the first one we did. So this one's going to run on May 30th. We are doing our schedule analysis. We're going team by team, all 18 Big Ten teams. Still always sounds weird. All 18 Big Ten teams. So we're going to take a quick look at everybody's schedule. We'll do a little bit of analysis, like game by game. We're not going to go we'll save some of the deep dives for August, September. But we're going to at least kind of do like a best case, worst case scenario. Just kind of give a glance at the schedules and talk things through here and see what maybe the expectation should be here in the fall. So we're on to Maryland. If you guys watched this previously, if not, I will link it at the end of the video. You can go, it'll pop up on your screen. There's like a little box you can click on. We ranked the Big Ten coaches on the hot seat in the spring, kind of going into the season. Whose seat was the hottest? I said it was Mike Locksley of Maryland. Chip, did you have Locksley as the hottest or like the second hottest maybe? I think it was the second.
Yeah, I was going to say I think he's definitely, he's up there. But we're not too far off. I know that.
Right. We're in agreement that Mike Locksley sees very hot. So we are on Maryland here. We're going to look at their schedule. And before I think the big question is this schedule conducive to Mike Locksley saving his job? Like, I hate to go there right away, but it's like, I don't think sitting here saying, well, can they win the Big Ten? Like, is this schedule conducive to Mike Locksley keeping his job in Maryland, kind of having some stability moving forward? Because new AD, like, not helping Locksley's cause when there's a new AD in town, probably wants to bring his own guy if things are shaky. How do you kind of look at this quickly, like on that, before we kind of dive into like segments of it?
I don't see it being conducive to Mike Locksley saving his job. This is not going to come as a surprise to you or to anyone who has followed Maryland football ever since they joined the Big Ten. And what I mean by this is, all right, when you look at Maryland's schedule, it's all with regard to Mike Locksley saving his job. It is completely conditional on Maryland getting off to a good start in the non-conference, which is certainly possible considering the fact that they open up at home against Florida Atlantic. They play Northern Illinois at home. They play Towson at home. That being said, when you take a step back, okay, they open up, they go on the road to Wisconsin. Then they come home. They have a bye week. They've got Washington, Nebraska. They have to go out to UCLA. Long story short, I just don't see Maryland having the horses to that's considering Northern Illinois pulled off the upset of the season last year, going on the road to Notre Dame. It's not completely far-fetched that Maryland starts out 2-1 in the non-conference, and then they go into a very treacherous Big Ten conference schedule. I don't see how Mike Locksley survives.
They have to go 3-0 in non-league. And I don't know if they will. I mean, maybe they will. They'll be favored against FAU, I would think. They'll be favored against Towson for sure. I guess they'll be favored in these games. I don't know. Like, I wonder if they drop, like, okay, let's say they like slip past Florida Atlantic and then lose Northern Illinois. Do they just like gone? Like, do they at least give them the year at that point? But like, they got to start 3-0, I think.
Yeah, I mean the challenge, I would think, if you're Maryland, is in today's day and age of like the transfer portal. I mean, guys can announce, okay, I'm out of here no matter what. I realize we're kind of coming up to it with regards to the house settlement, and players can say I'm out of here at any point. If they pull the plug that early, you might see just kind of en masse a bunch of guys deciding to bail on the season. The advantage, if there is, you got to try and find the silver lining in every cloud, so to speak, is if Maryland did decide to pull the plug on Mike Locksley early in the season, that would give them a head start in terms of the evaluation process of available coaches that they could vet, that they could possibly look at to try and entice to come to Maryland. I think that they're going to give him the year, but it really depends on how they're doing in the Big Ten. I don't see it at the end of the non-conference. I could see it midway through the Big Ten's schedule, and by that I mean they do have another bye week, which is at the end of October. I realize I mentioned about going on the road to UCLA. If they've gone over in the Big Ten conference so far, I could see them pulling the plug then. But I see them giving him more than just the non-conference portion of the schedule.
I look at this and we'll kind of read it down to you. Big Ten schedule: at Wisconsin, home Washington, home Nebraska, at UCLA, home Indiana, at Rutgers, at Illinois, home Michigan, at Michigan State.
That's what I mean. That's
9 games. They're going to be under. They're not going to be favored in any of those games, right?
That's exactly it, and that's part of the challenge. If you're a Maryland fan, let's face it. And this is just kind of taking a step back from when the Big Ten used to have divisions. Is I would think that the strategy, not that they wanted to do poorly, but if you were Maryland, I would think that the strategy was win all your non-conference games, even though you're in the same division as Michigan and Ohio State and Penn State. If you're Maryland, you can probably win games against Indiana. You can probably win a game against Michigan State. You can probably win a game against Rutgers, or at least that was probably the strategy. That gets you to at least 6. Maybe if you can steal the Big Ten West game or 2, depending on who you're matched up with, get you into a better bowl. Now that they abolished the divisions, the way you just read that schedule, Mark, I mean, Ohio State isn't on the schedule. Neither is Penn State. They still got to play Michigan. I don't see how Maryland's going to be favored in any of those Big Ten games, considering the fact that they have to go on the road. That UCLA game looks to me it's going to be daunting, just that cross-country trip. The fact that we were expecting Illinois to be really good. I know I just mentioned Michigan, but Michigan should be a physical team that they're going to have difficulty with. So I don't see how Maryland is going to be able to compete against some of the more physical teams within the Big Ten.
Yeah, it's an interesting schedule in the sense that on one hand, you might sit there and be like, oh, this is favorable. They didn't draw Ohio State, Oregon, or Penn State. But they also didn't draw Purdue or Northwestern. So while they may not have gotten like the cream of the Big Ten crop on their schedule, they didn't get any layups. Like Purdue, even as down as Maryland is right now, Maryland would be favored against Purdue.
Mm-hmm.
They don't get Purdue. If they play Northwestern at home, they might be favored against Northwestern at home. They don't play Northwestern. I don't see where they're going to be favored here.
And let's not forget the fact that not that he was all conference, but he was a serviceable quarterback. Billy Edwards Jr. is now going to be the starting quarterback for Wisconsin. They're going to Wisconsin. So you know that Wisconsin, I think, has their own motivations, but I think Billy Edwards Jr. certainly is going to want to be playing at his best. But when you look at the Maryland quarterback position, they added in 16 new players. One of the guys that they're probably really excited about, Malik Washington, he's a highly touted freshman. They also got a transfer portal quarterback in Justin Martin. The fact that they have instability at the most important position on the football field, combined with uncertainty at the coaching as well as a challenging conference schedule, I just don't see this being a good year for Maryland.
Yeah, and again, you lose Roman Hemby to Indiana.
Yes.
He's going to come back and play you on homecoming, nonetheless. How ironic. So this is not great. Again, I think people will look at this initially and say, well, there's no Ohio State, Oregon, or Penn. Yeah, okay, but where are the wins? That's fine. We know they've avoided those 3 teams that were almost certain losses, but where are the wins? Find me the wins. Gosh, I mean, maybe home Nebraska but yeah. There's home Nebraska. There's maybe home Washington coming off a bye, and they're traveling across the country. But I actually think Washington's going to be pretty good this year, so I wouldn't predict that. I still am not sure if UCLA is going to be any good this year, but that's a cross-country trip, and we've seen already that that's not been a great thing for the old school, not that Maryland's really an old school Big Ten team, but like just the East Coast based, the Eastern time zone Big Ten teams have had some struggles when they go out west. Maybe you get Michigan State on the road in a climate controlled environment. It looks like it's going to be at Ford Field. Maybe if Michigan State's had a tough year, you're getting them at, maybe everyone's just ready to pack it in. I mean, I don't know. I'm trying hard to come up with wins here, and it's just not happening for me. So Chip, like, what's your best case, worst case scenario here record wise for Maryland?
Okay. Let's go with the best case. Best case scenario is they get to, and I'm going to use six wins, is the best I can see. And I'm going to liberally steal from you some of the best case scenario. And what I mean by that is, all right, let's say best case scenario, they go 3-0 in non-conference, and I'm going to give them it would be a surprise. I don't think this is going to happen. I'm going to give them wins versus Washington because of the cross-country travel. I'm going to give them a win against Nebraska for, just maybe Nebraska has, an off day. And let's just, using your scenario there, that maybe Michigan State is having a difficult year, difficult season. So it's the last game of the year. And that's when they get to magic number 6. I don't see that happening. I really don't. I see flipping it over to the worst case scenario as I see the 3-9. I think the worst case scenario is actually close to the best case scenario. I really do. I mean, as terrible as that sounds, from what I saw in the spring game, and I want to always reiterate the fact that you can't put too much stock into a spring game. Maryland just looks to me like a team, even with Pep Hamilton, who is a veteran offensive coordinator. This is his first year. They have instability at the quarterback position. Maryland has not built their program to be a physical Big Ten style team. Like you said, Roman Hemby is gone. I don't see them being able to run the ball effectively. I think the fact that they have inexperience and instability at the quarterback position, I think that's going to hurt them. So I see more than likely at best that they get off to hopefully a good start in their non-conference, but then I think the Big Ten really turns into just a really difficult slog.
I actually think you're generous. I'm building in a generosity win here. I want to say 4-8 is best case. I'm going to say 5-7, but I don't love that I'm doing that. I'm going to say 5-7 is best case. They win. They sweep their non-conference. And, yeah, they get Washington at home off a bye, cross-country. Maybe they do that. Or maybe they get Nebraska or UCLA. And then it's just going to be just a brutal November, I think, for them. Cold weather games, road games, you name it, good teams. I think 5 if they went 5-7 this year, I would almost almost have to bring him back at that point, because I think that would actually be overachieving pretty significantly. Worst case to me, I think 2-10 is the worst case. I think they could. If you told me Maryland went 2-10 this year, I'd be like, ouch, but I wouldn't be like, oh, that's impossible.
Right.
I mean, they could lose one of their first 2 games in the non-league, which is going to immediately set you off. And then, I mean, look, 0-9 in Big Ten play is not out of the question. They are not going to be favored in any of those games. They're going to be an underdog in all 9 games, I think.
Oh, I completely agree. Something that you mentioned a moment ago that I think a lot of people may have either forgotten or just it just really depends on your view of Maryland football. is that you mentioned, okay, how November is brutal. They went winless in November last year. That was a major contributor to a very difficult year last year. And when you look at that November schedule, I see a complete repeat of the fact that I see the same thing happening. So that's why when we were talking earlier about job security, I think that's kind of where, if you're Maryland and things are starting to really kind of go down the toilet, so to speak, you have to be thinking in the back of your mind, hey, we can't, wait around for this to get better, because with the early signing period in December, guys possibly entering the transfer portal, that's when if things are starting to look bleak at the beginning of November, I think, that's kind of why I was saying it's like I could see them pulling the plug midway through like the Big Ten conference schedule and saying, all right, we need to cut our losses and try to, salvage the future with the recruiting class and the guys that are on the roster, and see who's out there that we might be able to lure to Maryland as the next head coach. I just think November is going to be kind of where things really start to, the wheels start to really fall off.
Yeah, like if they have a tough October, and I'll take it one step further, if they lose one of their early non-conference games and then go and have a tough October, I don't know how that program's going to pick itself up by the bootstraps and play 5 good games. And I think they have 5 games in November.
Yes, they do. And you mentioned we've both talked about how the Michigan State game on the road in a climate-controlled environment at Michigan or at Ford Field, the reality is they're playing they're hosting Michigan the week before that. I say what you will about how good or bad Michigan may be. I think that physical style of play that Michigan always is known for, I think that's going to have it. It's just going to take its toll. So when they do go on the road to Michigan State, I think that they might, mentally and physically have checked out.
I agree. Like we talk about, best case scenarios, and then, maybe getting a down Michigan State team who's ready just to end the season. I think it's far more likely that game is Michigan State's ticket to a bowl game than it is that Maryland needs it for a bowl game and Michigan State's packing it in. I think it's far more likely it's the other way around, and that they are going to get a Michigan State team that still has something to play for in terms of like bowl eligibility or improving their bowl game or whatever it might be. Because I do like Jonathan Smith, and I do like what they've kind of accumulated this year. I think they could be better this year, significantly better. But I'd like to be positive on all 18 of these. I really would like to. Generally try to do that with these things, but it's just really hard for me to see this team win more than 4 or 5 games. I think it's likely they only win 2 or 3. I really do. I think it's likely. Like if you put a gun in my head, like got to guess it perfectly, I'm going to say 3 and 9.
Yeah, that's I like I said a moment ago. I think the worst, the worst case scenario is so much closer to being the best case scenario. As grim and brutal as that sounds, I just you try to be optimistic, but when you look at everything that the players that they've lost, especially the fact that at quarterback, that's such a crucial position. I don't care if we're talking about Maryland or any other team, and then when you throw in just that Big Ten schedule, I just don't see how Maryland how they're going to be a factor at all.
Yeah, and it's kind of my last thought on this is like this has the look, the structure, the makeup of a team, of a program that's like in rebuild mode. That it's like, well, just they got to get their guys in there. Pep Hamilton first year, they got to get the quarterback. They got to do we got to do all these things, and then just give us 2 or 3 years to get the. But like Locksley's been there. Like this isn't year 2 or 3 of the Mike Locksley experiment, so you're not going to get that benefit of the doubt. And so I think there's probably going to be a coaching search here sooner than later, and we'll see. I've certainly given them plenty of bulletin board material in some of our podcasts, so I can look really foolish if they're good this year. But I don't know. And the thing is, I think this is actually a sneaky good job. I don't think it's like a great job, just because of how many other programs you're recruiting against. That like football's king, and like Maryland basketball is kind of a big thing there, but you don't have the pressure of some of the other football schools because you're kind of a basketball school. You're in a very talent-loaded area. You don't have to really recruit a huge like radius. I think this has been an underachieve. I really do. I think over the last, my lifetime, 40 years, I think this is one of the bigger underachieving programs in college football. I'm not saying they should be like a championship contender or anything like that, but this should be a program that goes to bowl games pretty much every year, that occasionally can win 8 or 9. Like Kentucky has been able to do that in the SEC. Why, Maryland should be able to do that, in my opinion. To me, Maryland is like the Big Ten's Kentucky. If you can do that at Kentucky, why can't you do that at Maryland? There's more local talent in Maryland. I don't know. I just think it's been a big underachiever. So we'll see what happens.
Well, again, showing my age, I remember when Maryland, now granted, this was pre-Big Ten, the fact that it's been, they've had a number of serious missteps since they joined the conference. But I do remember when I was a teenager, Maryland football was, if not necessarily a powerhouse, but they were a solid program. Like that was the kind of team that you would expect. Like there was actually a run of Maryland quarterbacks, starting with again like Boomer Esiason, Frank Reich, Stan Gelbaugh. They all played in the NFL. Like there was Bobby Ross that was a really good coach, and I realize we're talking like 40 years ago. But to your point, the reason I'm bringing this up is that the talent is there within the state. I think that we talk about, and I realize that we'll talk about Rutgers in another episode, is that's always been kind of the secret for Rutgers, is if they can convince enough of the talented players from their home state to stay close to home and play, that has usually been enough for Rutgers to field a winning team. The same thing is applicable, and I agree with you. I think that there's more talent on hand in the state of Maryland than there is in the state of Kentucky. For Maryland to be able to field a winning team, I'm not saying a dominant team, but a winning team, if you have the right kind of coach that is able to keep enough talent there, because that's kind of traditionally what has happened. Ohio State comes in, Penn State comes in, Notre Dame comes in, you name it, teams being able to come in and pluck and entice the talent from the state of Maryland to leave if you have the right guy. And for a while, Mike Locksley, his reputation as a recruiter, he was able to do it. I just don't think that they have the talent on hand to be a competitive force within the Big Ten this year.
Yep. No, I agree. And back to your point a little bit, like there's more talent than ever there in the DMV. Like that area has exploded over the last 20 years. There's more talent than ever there. Like it's not like the talent started to shrink up over the last 20 years. It's actually gotten better, especially when you start getting down into Northern Virginia. So the school has enough resources to be competitive. I've never quite been able to wrap my brain around it for them, but we'll see what they do this year. We'll see if there's a coaching change. Obviously they've made, there's a new athletic director in town, so we'll see how that impacts their coaching situation, but we'll see. Again, I think we both look at this as a non-bowl qualifier, and we'll see if they can outperform our expectations. We will do a deeper dive into some of the big games on their schedule here, probably in like August. But that was our first look. We'll be doing these on all 18 teams, so we got 16 more to go. So keep it locked in here as we go schedule or team by team to do our 2025 schedule analysis. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and thanks for listening.